Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. Today, I'm back here at this car lot, taking a look at this 2013. It's a Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD. This has the 6.0 liter V8 engine. They just bought this at the auction. They're telling me they scanned it with their scan tool and they have a multitude of different codes. The ABS light, the traction control light are both illuminated on the cluster. Now, of course, with auction vehicles, a lot of times there's history behind them that unfortunately we just don't know about. So oftentimes when I run into these, it's usually peeling back layers, trying to figure out what has been done to the truck so that we can diagnose it and fix it. So hopefully you guys stick around for this one. Let's go ahead and move inside the truck. I got the scan tool hooked up. Let me show you what we got. All right guys, so hopping inside the truck, let me show you on the instrument panel that we have several lights illuminated. So first of all, we have our traction control light here. We have our ABS light over here. And if you look down here, we have this service traction control message on the dash here. Also, it says service stabilitrak and it says service trailer brake system. Okay, so we have quite a few different messages popping up over here. So again, like I said, I've got the scan tool connected. Today I'm using the X431 Pro Mini, a very awesome handheld scan tool. I really use this thing a lot. And I love it that it's easy to carry around. It's handheld, ergonomic. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on diagnose. We're gonna choose American. This is a Chevrolet. I'm gonna hit okay. We're gonna do an automatic search. Now we're gonna run a full health report. And what that's going to do is it's going to scan all of the modules on the truck. This is an automatic transmission. It's asking us if this has a manual transfer case. This is a 4x4 truck. And if you look up here, you can see the selector switch for the transfer case. And so this is electronic, it's not manual. We don't have the old school handle down here on the floorboard. And so we're going to select no. It's asking us if this is the base radio. You guys can see this is just the regular base radio. So we'll hit base. It's asking us if we have automatic air conditioning. Obviously we don't, we just have these manual switches here. And so we'll hit manual. Now it's asking us if it has trailer brake. Obviously it does if we're getting a message on the dash for the trailer brake. So let's go ahead and select trailer brake. This one's equal or over to 8,600 gross vehicle weight. Now it's asking us if this vehicle has stability enhancement system. Again, guys, we had a message on the cluster that showed us that we have a problem with the stabilitrak. So we're going to select yes. Now it's asking us if this thing has the Z95 leveling system. I'm going to say no. Now it's scanning all of the modules on the truck. We'll let this thing finish and then we'll take a look at all of our codes. Okay, so our scan is finished. Starting up here at the top, we have the transfer case control module. And already you can see that we're showing some U communication codes. So first of all, we have this U100 lost communication with the engine control module, ECM. Then we have this UO101 lost communication with transmission control module, TCM. And we have this UO140 lost communication with body control module. And then finally we have this UO121 lost communication with the anti-lock brake system, ABS control module. Okay, so that's interesting. It looks like our transfer case control module seems to have a problem communicating with every other module on this vehicle. And so let's scroll down and continue to look at these codes. Next up we have this EBCM, which is the brake control module, also known as the ABS control module. And if you read here, we have a C0050 right rear wheel speed sensor, circuit open or shorted to battery or ground. That is the only code present here in the EBCM, which is interesting because generally when you have CAN communication codes where a module is saying that it can't communicate with any other module on the system or on the network, generally the other modules are going to say that they can't communicate with that module either. And so I'm surprised that we don't have a U communication code in the EBCM saying that it can't communicate with the transfer case control module. And so again, we have a right rear wheel speed sensor code in the EBCM. We'll just add that to the list of problems that we have. And then next up we have the trailer brake control module, or the TBCM. And as you can see here, we have a code P0602 control module not programmed. And that's an interesting one. That description is pretty straightforward. It's telling us that the control module has not been programmed, and so either somebody's already replaced the trailer brake control module and they didn't actually program it, or we have another issue going on here. But like I said, what I find interesting is that every other control module on this vehicle is showing that everything is normal. And so if you look at the ECM, we don't have any codes. TCM, we don't have any codes. BCM, we don't have any codes. HVAC, instrument panel, I can go down the list here, and none of them have any codes. Again, I find that interesting because our transfer case control module is saying that it can't communicate with the ECM or the TCM or the BCM or the ABS. However, none of those other modules here are telling me that there's a problem. That is interesting. The next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and clear all of these codes, and we're going to rescan it and see which codes come back. And that's going to tell us whether or not any of these are hard faults, because maybe something previously was disconnected or somebody was messing with something. And so first of all, I'm going to run a quick report, and what that's going to do is it's going to save all of these trouble codes onto this diagnostic report. So you can see this is a really nice, really cool feature this thing has. So it's showing us all of our codes, and I'm going to save it into the memory here so I can go back and look at it if I need to. Now I'm going to hit clear DTCs. We'll hit yes. We'll let this thing finish scanning. Okay, so right now, taking a look at what codes came back immediately, you can see that we have the EBCM is showing us our right rear wheel speed sensor is still having a problem, and our trailer brake control module is still showing that it's not programmed. Now, what didn't come back was our codes for our transfer case control module. You can see that now it's showing normal, so there is no current issue with this thing not being able to communicate with the other modules on the system. All right, guys, so obviously the communication codes that we had in the transfer case control module, we're going to keep them in the back of our minds. However, they are not hard faults, and so more than likely those codes were set when somebody was possibly doing some testing, or maybe they had something disconnected. Again, this is an auction vehicle that somebody probably attempted to fix, and so even though those codes could mean that there may be some type of intermittent problem, at this point we're not going to focus on that. We're going to shift our focus to programming the trailer brake control module and figuring out what's going on with the wheel speed sensor. All right, guys, so according to the information on all data, what they're showing us is that the trailer brake control module is located underneath the back of the vehicle where the spare tire is. And so I'm going to move under here and let's see if we can locate the module. I'll check it out, guys. This spare tire is actually missing. You can see this is our little piece that holds up the spare tire, and so this should make it easier for us to locate our module, which, oh, I can already see it. It's right here. So boy, does that thing look brand new. I mean, obviously, because taking a look at the rest of the underside of this truck, you can see a bunch of mud inside of this frame here. So obviously this truck was used for mudding purposes. You can see all the mud on here. I don't want to get that in my eye. And so in stark contrast, you can see how nice and clean this module is, and whatever this thing is here. Okay, so obviously they replaced this module without realizing that they needed to program it. I don't see any damage to the wiring here, nothing like that. And so it seems to me that they probably had an issue where maybe they had water intrusion to this thing, because again, you can see that all of this mud caked all over these connectors and stuff. So they probably drove through some really high water and damaged the computer module, and so that's why they replaced it. Simple enough. We'll go ahead and program this one. I'll see if it's possible to do it with the scan tool. However, I do think that we are going to have to use the J-Box in order to program this. I don't think the scan tool can do it inherently, but we'll find out in just a minute. Anyway, shifting our focus over to the right rear tire over here, you can see that it actually looks like they replaced the wheel speed sensor. This here is the cable for the wheel speed sensor, and if you follow it up, you can see that that is a brand new connector there. Let's go ahead and make sure that this thing is fully connected, and I'm tugging on it. It is not budging, so obviously we have a good connection here. And obviously you can see that they did replace the wheel speed sensor, because this is where it's bolted to the back of the axle here. And if you compare it to the other side, you can see that this sensor has been here a long time. It's covered in dirt and all kinds of road debris. So it's pretty obvious they replaced the wheel speed sensor already. Now, something I do find interesting, which, I mean, it may not even mean anything, but if you look at this shock here, you can see that this is the original shock, nice and dirty. And if you look over on this side where they replaced our wheel speed sensor, we have a nice shiny brand new part. And so this shock was replaced on this side. I'm not exactly sure why they did that. I wonder if maybe they hit something, possibly damaged the shock, and maybe even damaged some of the wiring harness. However, when I look at it closely and I follow the wiring harness for the wheel speed sensor back up and over the frame here, you can see that there is no obvious damage to this wiring harness. And so I don't think that really has anything to do with it. All right, guys, so real quick before we continue, I wanted to take a moment to go over the code description with you guys. So if you recall, we have this C0050-05 which is going to be the right rear wheel speed sensor circuit, short to battery or open. Now, if we look at the code description, it basically tells us that our reference voltage, the 12-volt reference for the right rear wheel speed sensor, is listed as having either an open circuit or high resistance in the circuit. And so if we scroll down here, you can see that they do give us a system description. Basically, it says the wheel speeds are detected by an active wheel speed sensor and encoder ring. The encoder ring consists of a permanent magnet. Each wheel speed sensor receives a 12-volt reference from the electronic brake control module, also called the EBCM, or the ABS control module, and provides a DC square wave signal back to the module. As the wheel spins, the EBCM uses the frequency of the square wave signal to calculate the wheel speed. Now up here on the screen, what I have is the wiring diagram for all 4 wheel speed sensors. And again, the one that we're concentrated on is going to be the right rear wheel speed sensor. So if you look right up here, this is going to be the speed sensor itself. You can see they drew a little gear for the reluctor wheel. And if you look, again, this is only a 2-wire sensor. And so if we follow this gray and black wire back to the computer, which is our ABS control module, also known as the electronic brake control module, you'll see that this is our 12-volt power feed, also known as the reference voltage. And so what the computer does is it sends out 12 volts on this gray and black wire. It reaches the wheel speed sensor. It goes through the wheel speed sensor. And then on the other end here, this brown wire going back to the computer, this is going to be our sensor ground. And so basically what the code is telling us is that our 12-volt reference voltage is staying high. So the possibilities here could range from anything such as a bad wheel speed sensor with an open circuit, or we could even have an open on our ground wire. That could also cause our reference voltage to always stay high. So the next thing that we need to do is go directly to this connector at the wheel speed sensor. We need to verify that we have our 12-volt reference voltage getting here. And we also need to verify if we have a good ground. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and test our wheel speed sensor. Let me show you the setup that I have. So if you look over here on the negative battery terminal, I have an extension lead going all the way to the back over here. Now this here is very useful if you're going to be doing this kind of testing. This is a 15-foot spool of retractable test leads. And so again, these are really useful if you got to do some testing in the back of the vehicle and you don't really feel confident using the ground on the frame. Again, there's a lot of mud underneath this truck, so I don't feel comfortable using any part of the frame as a ground for my test lead. And so if you look down here, you can see that I have my meter and my ground connection is connected to the comm. And so on the other end here, I have my yellow test lead. And what we're going to do is we're going to back probe our wheel speed sensor behind the frame here. Now, as you guys can see, I actually jacked up the rear wheel just on this side, and I only jacked it up about 1 inch just so that I can spin the tire here. Now I'm going to take you guys back underneath here where our connector is, and I'm going to be back probing these 2 wires. Now, it is kind of difficult to tell which wire is which because I can't really differentiate the colors here because these wires are so dirty, and so I might have to peel some of this back. Maybe try to clean this up here. All right, guys, so after cleaning this up a little bit, I was able to determine that this wire here is our gray and black wire. And so you guys can see I stuck the back probe in here. We've got it all the way in there. Now let's go ahead and connect it to the meter. Okay, guys, so I went ahead and turned the ignition switch to the on position. Also, while I was at it, I went ahead and I put the transmission into neutral so that we can spin this wheel freely. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the meter down here. Take a look at that. We are not showing any voltage at all. Let me double check my connection and make sure that we're all the way in there. Okay, yeah, guys, so I went ahead and I double checked my connection. We are still not showing any voltage on here. So let me go ahead and unplug the connector and see if we regain our voltage. All right, guys, so just to be sure here, I went ahead and I disconnected the connector, and I went ahead and I stuck the back probe into the front of the terminal. Don't worry, this is not spreading the terminal open. This back probe is just the right size. It fit right in there, so it's nice and snug. Now take a look at the meter. You can see that we still are not showing any voltage at all. It's telling me that we don't have power getting up to the wheel speed sensor connector over here. And so we need to figure out what's going on. Do we have a short to ground somewhere? Or do we have a problem where the ABS module is just not outputting the power to this circuit? All right, guys, so the next test I want to do is a very simple one, something I like to call the wiggle test. Basically, we still have the lead connected to the meter here. And if you look at the meter, I did switch it over to a 2-second time base. That way, if there is any activity, we're going to be able to see it on the screen. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm just going to follow the wiring harness here, and I'm going to wiggle it just like that. We're going to watch the meter and see if we have any activity. I don't see any change on the meter. I'm going to start working my way backward. I still don't see any change on the meter. Let's continue moving back here. This harness actually goes up and over the frame here. I'm going to wiggle it around. We still have no change. I'm going to continue down the line. Over on this side, I'm keeping an eye on the meter over there. Still, I don't see any change. Now I can feel where this harness joins the rest of the wiring harness. Then it basically runs along the frame here all the way to the front of the truck where the ABS module is located. So I'm just gonna keep working my way down this harness. Ooh, there's tons of mud over here. Wow, it is raining mud. Oh my gosh. Now I'm gonna keep my eye on that meter. Wow. Oh my gosh, it's raining mud over here. So I basically tried to follow the wiring harness all the way across the bottom of the truck to where the ABS control module is located, right underneath the driver's side over here. Basically, the harness kind of disappears above the gas tank, so I tried my best to get up in there, move the harness around, and then it kind of reappears along the frame over here. You can see where the harness starts to reappear over here. This is the gas tank back there. And if we continue forward, you can see that it actually comes over to this side of the frame. Over here, you can see where the harness loops up and over to where it connects to the ABS control module. Now this here is our ABS control module. This is the hydraulic unit, and this is the little computer part that's attached to it. And you can see our wiring harness. Now, I did try and wiggle the harness over here, and I did not see any change in our meter. So now that we're at this point, let's go ahead and disconnect this thing so we can pull the backing off of the connector. That way we can back probe our wire at this point and see if we have any power here. All right, guys, so fast forward. It actually took me a while to get this thing disconnected. You can see that it's filled with mud and dirt, rocks, and debris, so I had to fight this clip up here to get it disconnected. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and take this plastic cover off the back side of it. Wow, check that out. Oh my gosh, there's so much mud in this connector. That's insane. Now, where the hell is our wire? Oh man, let me get this thing cleaned up. All right, guys, so I've got our back probe installed on our pin number 3, which is our gray and black wire. Now, I did have to use some of this brake cleaner to spray down this connector so I can get the back probe in here, because this thing was covered in mud. And so it feels like we got a good connection. I'm gonna go ahead and reconnect the connector to the ABS module up there. All right, guys, so I've got the connector reconnected with the back probe installed. I really did have to fight this thing to get it in there because there was so much mud inside of the edge of the connector that I couldn't get it back on there. But after fighting with this thing for a while, I finally got it on there. Now let me take you guys over to the lab scope and show you what we got. Okay, guys, so looking at the lab scope, you can see that we actually have 11 volts here coming straight out of the ABS module. Now it's 11 volts right now because our battery is getting low, and so we are showing system voltage. I guess I could just start this thing up and see if we got our 12 volts there. All right, guys, so check this out. We have 13.4 volts coming straight out of the ABS module. So we know for a fact that our problem has to be somewhere in the wiring between the ABS module and the wheel speed sensor on the right rear. All right, guys, so at this point, I've actually ran out of daylight, so they're about to close here. We're gonna have to continue this tomorrow. All right, guys, it is the following day. We are back to finish troubleshooting this truck. Now, if you guys remember where we left off, we found out that we had power coming out of the ABS control module, also known as the EBCM. However, that power was not reaching the connector for the wheel speed sensor in the back. Now, our visual inspection did not yield any good results. We didn't find any obvious damage to the wiring harness. And so at this point, that really only leaves us one more choice, and that is to do pinpoint testing along the wire to try and determine where the power goes missing. And so let me take you guys back under the truck and show you what I got going on. All right, guys, so back underneath the vehicle, you can see that we're back where our wheel speed sensor connector is. Now, what I want to do is I kind of want to go maybe a foot behind the connector, somewhere in this area, and open up the wire loom so I can connect my test lead over here to see whether or not we have power. Now, what I'm hoping is that our damage is somewhere in this part of the wiring, because I'm really hoping it's not where the wiring joins the rest of the harness here, because if we have to start opening up this big harness, there's a lot of wires in there. It's not going to be easy trying to determine which one is the one we're looking for. And so hopefully our problem is between this point here and the connector over there. All right, so as you can see, I went ahead and I pulled the wiring out of the loom here, and I've got my piercing tool on that wire, and I have my lead connected over here to my power probe. And if you guys look here, I'm not showing any voltage at this point, so I'm gonna have to move a little further down the line. All right, guys, so I'm tapped in over at this point behind the frame. You can see this is where I was before over here, and the wiring harness runs up and along the back side of this frame here. Let me give you a close-up of the lead here. You can see my piercing tool is on the gray and black wire. Let me take you guys down to the meter. Take a look at that. We still do not show any voltage at all. All right, so at this point, this is not what I wanted to see, because again, if you guys follow this harness, you can see where it actually joins the rest of the wiring harness here and becomes part of this bulk assembly over here. Now, this harness runs alongside the entire truck up and over the gas tank where I can't even get to it. All right guys, so what I decided to do next is I went ahead and I took the piercing probe and clamped it to the wire directly coming out of the connector of the ABS control module. I know we showed power here before when we slid the back probe into the terminal. However, I wanted to be sure that our problem wasn't in the wiring directly behind the connector. So I've got the probe here tapped into our wire. Now let's take a look at the meter. All right, so taking a look at the meter, you guys can see we are showing 11 volts. So our wiring coming directly out of the ABS control module is good. Now the question is, where along this entire wiring harness is this thing damaged? I mean, if you guys think about it, this wiring harness is pretty protected. And so if there was any damage along this harness, we would probably have more issues than just that one wheel speed sensor not getting its reference voltage. If this harness is damaged somewhere, more than likely the damage is going to be to multiple wires running to multiple circuits. And this truck's going to have all kinds of issues. What is the likeliness of one wire being damaged in a harness that probably has 100? I mean, it's possible, but very unlikely. I guess at this point, I'm just gonna keep chasing this wire and I'll let you guys know what I find. Man, guys, let me show you what it looks like above the gas tank. So if we move into the wheel well here and you look above the frame, you can actually see that that's our fuel pump there. However, you can't even really make out any distinct part of the fuel pump. If you look right there in the middle, that's the connector. And this is our harness that runs above the gas tank here. I'm gonna move it. Jesus. Oh crap, the wind just blew it in my eyes. Look at how much mud is caked all over this gas tank here. I mean, this is crazy. Now, at this point, I really wouldn't blame someone if they just wanted to go ahead and run their own wire from the ABS module all the way to the wheel speed sensor in the back, because quite honestly, that's going to be the quickest way to solve this problem. I mean, if this truck were mine, that's how I would probably do it. But I know you guys want me to find where this wire is broken. And so I'm going to continue torturing myself, trying to trace this thing down, and hopefully we can find it. 1 hour later. All right, guys, so fast forward. I know some of you may be a little bit disappointed. However, please understand that I just spent the last hour underneath this truck trying to trace this wiring harness. I'm covered in mud. It's all in my eyes, all in my hair, all in my shirt. So please forgive me if I don't feel like continuing with this. I've already checked as much as the wiring harness as I can. I can't seem to find where our problem is. Now, the only place left is above the gas tank. Now, I've already spoke to the owner and he does not want to drop the gas tank for me. And so my only other option is to go ahead and run my own wire from the ABS module to the right rear wheel speed sensor. Okay, so fast forward once again. I just got done running the wire from the ABS module back over to the wheel speed sensor on the right rear. Let me take you guys underneath to show you. Okay, so looking at it from the back side here, you can see our wire running along the harness. It goes over here, up and around the frame. Now, I did use several tie straps to make sure that the wire was kept in place and away from anywhere that it could rub up against the metal. Now, if you look over here where our harness is, this is the harness leading up to the connector. Now in this area is where I spliced our wire in. So from this point forward, it's the original wire going up to the connector. Now taking a look at the connector, you can see I have it plugged in. I've still got my back probe in there. Now let me take you guys over to the meter and show you that we have our reference voltage. 11.5 volts. Again, the battery's getting kind of low. So let me go inside and start this thing up. All right, the engine is running. Now take a look at the instrument cluster, guys. We no longer have an ABS light or a traction control light. I haven't even connected a scan tool to clear any codes, but what I can tell you is that the code for the wheel speed sensor was a hard fault. And so as soon as we would turn the ignition on, the computer would set the fault code and turn the ABS light and the traction control light on. So that to me proves that this is a fix. Now, while I'm at it, I guess I could show you guys the system voltage while this thing is running. You can see that we're showing 13.5 volts on our wheel speed sensor. Now, I don't know if I filmed it in the video or not, but I did also check the ground side at the connector, and we did have a good ground. So our problem really was only with the power feed. All right, guys, so the final thing I have to do is program the trailer brake control module. So over here, I have my laptop. Down here, I have my J-Box pass-through device. Now, I have made a previous video on how to do the programming on Chevy trucks. If you have not watched that, I will leave a link down in the description. Now, I did mention something in that video about how things are constantly changing. I've got a perfect example here. If you look along the side, you can see that GM added this sidebar for their TechLine Connect. I've already clicked on the little SPS logo, and so now we're in the SPS programming. I'm gonna go ahead and click next. I selected trailer brake control module. Now we'll hit next. This here is showing you the latest calibration. So we're gonna go ahead and click next, and we can start programming. Up here, you can see it downloaded the software or the calibration. and now it's doing the actual programming. You can see it's programming pretty quickly, and we are done. There we have it, guys. Already you can see that our trailer brake warning system light is gone. We no longer have the ABS light or the brake light on, so that's a fix. All right, so now that we've done all of the repairs, the next thing we need to do is verify our fix. So we're gonna take this thing for a test drive. I've got my scan tool hooked up, and you can see that I have all 4 wheel speed sensor data pins pulled up. You can see we have the left front, the left rear, the right front, and the right rear. Now this right rear is the one that we did our repair on, so we are going to be focusing on this one the most. So let's go ahead and take this thing for a test drive. All right, so I'm coming up to a stop here. Let's take a quick look at the scan tool. All right, guys, as you can see, all 4 wheel speed sensors are pretty much reading exactly the same. You can see that right rear wheel speed sensor pretty much matches every other sensor here. All of the patterns are the same. Our sensor is reading properly, and so that's definitely a fix. All right, guys, so fast forward. It's now been actually over a month since I filmed the video of that diagnosis, and so I wanted to give you guys an update before I end off the video. I talked to the owner yesterday, and he told me that so far the truck is running great. We no longer have an issue with the ABS wheel speed sensor. We no longer have an issue with the service trailer brake control module, and the issue with the transfer case control module never came back. Like I said, I wasn't sure if that code was set because somebody was messing around. Maybe they unplugged the module, but whatever the reason may be, those codes never came back. So I really don't think it was a problem to begin with. Anyways, guys, like I always say, thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it useful, informational, educational, entertaining. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.